Hi, my name is Ben, and today I'm going to talk about 3 Eucharistic miracles that will change the way you look at the Catholic Mass. Alright, now I would like to explain, for those of you who don't know, before we get started in this discussion, that the key part of the Catholic Mass is the consecration of the bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ. So, in other words, we believe that regular bread and wine are turned into the actual body and blood of Christ, albeit still in the form of bread and wine, through transubstantiation, which basically just means God turns it into the body and blood of Christ. So this is an idea that many people find strange or even ridiculous, and for good reason. It seems like impossible, right? That couldn't happen. But in this video, I seek to present to you guys 3 different Eucharistic miracles that I hope will change the way you think about the Catholic Mass and the consecration of the bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ. Okay, the first Eucharistic miracle I would like to talk about occurred in Lanciano, Italy in 750 AD, or roughly somewhere in there. Now, before you're like, oh great, this kid's just talking about these really old stories that we can't verify or prove. First off, this Eucharistic miracle was verified recently, but also, for the doubters, I will talk about 2 very recent Eucharistic miracles after this one. But for now, I want to talk about this one because I think it's pretty cool. It's definitely like the most famous of the Eucharistic miracles, so I thought it was worth discussing here. So basically, the story goes, there was a monk who was celebrating the Mass, and when he raised the host, it turned into live flesh, okay? And the blood, or the wine, right, turned into 5 globules. It coagulated, right? The blood coagulated. So, after this happened, the monk, talked to his superiors, right? Anyways, the flesh and the blood got set aside and carefully preserved and put on display, okay? And so 12 centuries later, it's still on display today and perfectly preserved. However, this is not the end to this incredible story, okay? So in 1970, the Archbishop in Lanciano brought in a doctor to examine it, the blood and flesh. So this doctor found during his study that it was human flesh and blood. He also discovered that the blood was type AB, which actually is a characteristic common among men who live in the Middle East, which basically would support the idea that this is Jesus' body and blood, right, because he's from the Middle East. Furthermore, he noted that the piece of flesh was cardiac tissue. So basically, this piece of flesh came from the heart. And so he basically submitted these applications to a journal, and the World Health Organization caught wind of it, and then they examined it for over a year and confirmed this doctor's findings. And this is the World Health Organization we're talking about. It's not like, like a bunch of Catholics just showed up and were like, oh yeah, this is good. Like, this is a group of people from all different backgrounds and religions who confirmed, yes, this is some kind of miracle that science cannot explain. Right, now, if a Eucharistic miracle that stumped the World Health Organization has not convinced you yet, that's fine. I'll move on to my second Eucharistic miracle, which occurred in Buenos Aires, Argentina in 1996. Now, there were actually 3 Eucharistic miracles in this one spot, 2 of which happened earlier in 1992 and 1994, but those were not examined, so I'm just going to focus on the last one that happened in 1996. Okay, so story goes that a consecrated host was discovered in the back of the church where it wasn't supposed to be, so as per standard procedure, the priest put it in holy water to dissolve. However, 9 days later, it was discovered that this host had blood stains on it and had not dissolved, which is highly unusual. So the priest contacted the Archbishop of Buenos Aires, who was the future Pope Francis, right? And so Pope Francis, or at this time Archbishop Jorge Bergoglio, had it photographed and then put in holy water for 3 years. After those 3 years, that host had not dissolved at all, which is impossible, right? That's the whole point of putting it in the holy water, is to get the host to dissolve. So this is, you can already tell something very strange was going on, right? However, then in 1999, this miracle was investigated by a scientific team, okay? And so, there are 8 different scientists involved in this investigation. They were not all Catholics, but they all agreed that the host was human tissue that had white blood cells, and these white blood cells were living at the time they were examined, which is very unusual because, according to these doctors, the white blood cells typically die within 2 hours after being taken from a body. So basically, it was almost like this tissue was still alive, which is obviously weird. So it was examined again in 2001, 2002, and 2004, and the original findings were confirmed again and again and again. So, and again, similar to the first Eucharistic miracle we talked about, it was also discovered that the sample was heart muscle, right? So again, it came from the heart. It was also inflamed and had white blood cells, which means, again, the heart was alive and pumping when the sample was taken, which is something I think you can't explain scientifically because there were blood stains, right? This didn't come from a heart. It was blood stains on the host that are still alive, which is just absolutely mind-boggling, right? It makes no sense at all, unless you consider that it's a miracle. So, again, these doctors were not Catholic. One was even an atheist who was just totally blown away by these findings. And some of them even converted to Catholicism after this investigation, because that's how inexplicable this miracle was. Right, now for our third Eucharistic miracle, which, if my previous 2 examples haven't at least piqued your interest to investigate, then this one may not convince you, but it's still an incredible story that I want to share with you guys. So, in 2008 in Poland, a consecrated host fell to the ground during Mass. So, as per standard operating procedure, it was put in a vessel containing holy water. And then several days later, a sacristan noticed that this consecrated host was partially dissolved and had strange red clots in it. So, she talked to the priest, eventually it gets up to the bishop, and so the bishop gets 2 doctors to examine the host, right? And so they noticed that the undissolved part of the host became embedded into a cloth, right? And the red blood clots were bright red, like it was fresh blood. So they discovered that, again, like the other Eucharistic miracles, it was heart muscle tissue, okay? And then the one finding of this particular miracle that didn't occur in the other Eucharistic miracles was that they realized the heart muscle fibers were actually intertwined with that of the bread, which basically, according to those doctors, meant that the only way this could have happened was if the bread had actually transformed into human tissue partially. It wasn't here's the blood and here's the bread. They were intertwined, which is physically impossible. The bread would literally have to change its substance, which is not, it'd have to be some sort of chemical reaction that we haven't discovered yet for it not to be a miracle. According to these doctors, they said that even NASA scientists would not be able to artificially recreate this particular miracle. So, those are my 3 Eucharistic miracles that I wanted to share with you guys today. I hope you found them at least interesting, and I encourage you guys to look up some Eucharistic miracles for yourself, because there are well over 100 documented Eucharistic miracles, and they're all just such incredible stories. And I hope it helps you realize a little bit, if not make you believe, why Catholics believe the body and blood of Christ are actually physically present in the bread and wine at Mass. Thank you. God bless. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe.